Clap? Clap for audio? Oh, no. Everybody please clap for me.
So that's Jack Conte. He's the CEO of Patreon. You know, billion-dollar company that helps creators get paid. And that's me with him. And this is the story of how he absolutely schooled me on how to be creative.
So we walked in and we were outside and there was a dude waiting, and it turns out it is Jack Conte himself. You have no clue to what extent I'm a fan of this guy. It is crazy, and he is like 3 meters away from me right now.
So that was almost a month ago. And here's a bit of context on why I was so excited. Jack Conte is a creative genius. And for those of you who don't know what Patreon is, Patreon helps creators get paid. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of creators you like plug their Patreon in the comments. But when I really found out about him is in his pitch video to Casey Neistat.
I've got an idea and I want to talk to you.
I remember clicking on it wondering what a CEO of a company would have to do with Casey Neistat. And why a CEO of a company had a YouTube channel in the first place. CEO of a billion-dollar company at that. And I watched the video and it blew my mind. I mean, the editing was amazing. The sound design was the best I've ever seen in a YouTube video.
I love making movies. I love being around.
The cuts were insane.
My first camera when I was like 13 probably.
And the storytelling was like out of this world. And so I was obsessed. And I will admit, I stalked the guy like everywhere on all socials. And he is amazing. You see, he started out as an indie musician and he built Patreon to help a problem he had. So he asked us to stop recording towards the beginning of the talk so he could be super candid. But one story which he's told many times about how Patreon was created, just it stuck with me. And that's something that all of you need to hear. See, this guy made a song and he wanted to make a music video with it. And so he decided he wanted to somehow rise up on a stage with 2 robots next to him. The problem is he doesn't have a stage, so he starts to build this thing in his garage by himself. And then about halfway through, he gets inspired by the Millennium Falcon's backboard with all those lights and things.
May the force be with you.
And he decides that he needs his entire garage's background to look like that for this 2-minute or 3-minute music video. And so he ends up spending a month, like a ton of money and a ton of time just to make an interesting music video where he can rise up with 2 robots for a YouTube channel. And he goes on to say how he was so frustrated that the YouTube video itself didn't make so much money based on the amount of effort he put. But the thing that inspired me the most is that is so creative. Naturally, after the talk, I was inspired by this extreme bout of creativity. Like I left feeling like I could create anything. And then I ended up creating basically nothing. So a day after this talk, I'm super inspired. It's like 10 p.m. at night and all of a sudden I get up and I'm like, I'm gonna make a YouTube video. And I didn't have any time to do any like setup or anything, so I literally just picked up my phone and started talking into it. And I just rambled and figured I could edit that into a video somehow. And I don't know where it went. I started talking about this talk and about him, and then about creativity in general and how I view it. And then look, I know like 7 chords on the guitar. I picked up a guitar and tried to improvise a song, and then I actually recorded it, which is not something I've ever done. I'm super shy when I perform music. And that would have been cool until a bunch of friends called. I kid you not, the reason blows my mind. Turns out in one of the dorms here at Berkeley, some kid took a fire extinguisher and just started like fire extinguishing the entire place for no reason, which somehow put the fire alarms on. And then fire trucks showed up. And then because it was for no reason, the police showed up. Then kids had to evacuate. And obviously we didn't want our friends to have like no place to stay. So they just came to ours. Thing is, I had said no to this dinner, which means I had this house all to myself while everybody else in the house was gone for the first time. But obviously when these guys came, I had to stop recording the video and improvising songs and entertain the guests. And they stayed for a while. And once they left, I was like, well, I could continue, but I could sleep and finish it some other time during the week when I'm free. Yep, that never happened. It just never ended up happening. I never found the time. 2 weeks later, we're now really close to midterms, so I had to start studying for those. And you know, because I had tests and essays due and projects and multiple projects during tests. And here I am 1 month and a week later, having made absolutely nothing since that initial bout of creativity. But the ironic thing is that in that talk that he gave us, that inspired me to have that bout of creativity, he told me the exact things I could have done to avoid this exact thing from happening. So it was a long and very interesting and very personal talk, but there's 3 tips he gave that I can talk about that I think really stood out with me. The first was that creativity is by nature unreasonable. It is unreasonable to make a stage where you rise up with 2 robots next to you and the background looks like the Millennium Falcon, but that is the nature of being creative. Nobody needs this stuff. Nobody needed Star Wars. Nobody needs stories, Lord of the Rings, or books or anything. It's an unreasonable thing to do. If you wanted to be reasonable, don't be creative. And so when I was in the middle of exam season, putting off that's an unreasonable idea, making a YouTube video while I have all of this work. No, I need to schedule time to make the YouTube video. It's always going to be unreasonable whether I have exams or not. And the second thing was that he follows the Paul McCartney style of creativity. I didn't verify this anecdote or anything, but apparently Paul McCartney would sit down at a piano when he had the initial idea for a song, and he would not get up until most of the song's idea was banged out. Regardless of how long that took, like it could take 2 hours, it could take 8 hours, it could take more. The truth is, I don't do that, and that explains a lot. Usually I sit down to make something, my initial burst of inspiration runs really hot and it burns out really fast, and then I'm like, I can finish this later, and then I never finish it. And that's exactly why my video never got done. I got interrupted and I decided I would finish working on it later, but that's not how this works. Later never came. And then the final one was don't listen to anyone's advice. Essentially, trust yourself. I mean, he gave lots of stories how that applied to his life, but I realized over here, sometimes I hold myself to the standard where I'm like, oh, my video needs to look a certain way and be edited in a certain way and have all these overlays and whatever, but that's not conducive to creativity. When I was in 8th grade, I had this same YouTube channel, and I made a video, I think, 3 times a week for 1.5 years. But then I decided I need to start making videos with a certain caliber, they need to look a certain way, and all of a sudden, I stopped shipping. The same thing happened about a year ago. I started using Premiere Pro instead of iMovie because it's professional software instead of amateur software. But the truth is, there were so many different ways I could edit and so many different things to put on screen that it would take forever for me to make a video because I was constantly trying to make it look fancier. And in the process of making it look fancier, I just wasn't shipping, which is what's important. When I first heard them, those 3 ideas were pretty great by themselves, but somehow this last month has been a lesson in itself of how to follow them and why they're important. And so hopefully moving forward, I'll be able to apply them. But I figured it'd be a shame if other people didn't hear about them too. So that's what this was.